Hello and welcome to our February OSSAT Hangout session. So we regularly hold these Hangout sessions about once a month, where we like to talk about different aspects of the space industry, from technical things to the things that we're progressing on the open source satellite program, to interesting technical areas like last month we talked about the solar cycle, but we also like to have other sessions where we talk about the industry as a whole, and this session we're going to be talking about careers and getting into the space, not literally into space. We're not going to tell you how to become the next Tim Peake, but hopefully we want to have an open discussion session about the space industry and getting into the space industry. So today I'm really lucky to be joined by a couple of guest speakers. So I've got with me Heidi Thiemann from the Space Skills Alliance, who's going to be talking about space skills. And I've also got Kathie Bowden from the Space Catapult, who is going to talk about the SPIN program, the Space Placements in Industry program. So I'm really delighted to welcome them both onto the call today. And the rough structure I'd put together was just to do some quick intros and an intro to the topic for today. Heidi to talk about the gaps, the skills survey results and where the gaps are. Have a bit of an open discussion and question session, and then towards the end of the session, ask Kathie to talk about the SPIN program, which is open at the moment. So why are we talking about this? Well, the space industry, UK space industry is growing. So from the UK Space Agency Size and Health of the Space Industry Report 2022, which is the latest report on this topic, and it was published last March, the space industry income in 2020-21 grew by 5.1% on its previous year, and it was about 17.5 billion. And this outpaced growth in both the global space industry and also the wider UK economy. In fact, the UK economy that year actually shrank that year, so we considerably outpaced the UK economy. So it's a growing industry as supported by this data. In 2020-2021, there were 1,500 space organisations in the country, and that supported about just around 50,000 jobs directly, and then the further supply chain totaling around 130,000 jobs. So it's a growing industry in the UK, supporting lots of jobs and lots of work. So an availability of skilled staff in the sector is affecting growth of the sector. So one of the things that is potentially limiting growth of the sector is the need for people to come into the industry at all levels. So hopefully I haven't stolen Heidi's thunder there. So I shall now let Heidi talk a bit more about what that looks like in terms of skills and what we need. Okay, if I stop sharing.
Fantastic. Yeah, I will share my screen then. So let's go. Hopefully you can see that.
Yep.
I can still see you. Brilliant. Ones of two screens. So thank you so much, Kathryn. Really useful introduction going into some of the issues that the industry faces with skills gaps. So I thought what I'd do in the next few minutes is just talk a bit about some of the skills gaps that were identified in the Space Sector Skills Survey carried out last year. So this was carried out by Space Skills Alliance and No Space for the UK Space Agency to try and find out a bit more information about where the skills gaps are and build on the trends from the first survey in 2020 to identify what's changed really in the last few years. Headline basically is skills problems are getting a bit worse, but there's lots of ways that we can remedy that. So I thought start with just covering a few of the skills gaps in the current space workforce. And the overview really is that the majority of companies are saying we are seeing skills gaps in job applicants, and about half the companies saying we have some sort of skills gaps in our current workforce. This means that when people are applying for jobs, they may not have the skills or competencies required by the company, and those in the workforce maybe aren't upskilling as quickly as the companies requiring them to for certain projects. And I'll go through some of the gaps, but essentially a lot of the key areas that space industry is struggling in is the same as a lot of other high-tech sectors, so high-value manufacturing, IT, tech, finance, all of these kind of software-related skills are some of the big gaps that space is struggling with. And all of these gaps mean that actually there's a lot of impact on how businesses run themselves. So one of the major impacts is actually, well, if people don't have the skills in the current workforce and they're not getting the right people in, the people currently doing the job are getting essentially more work put on them, more stressed, and not enjoying work quite as much. There's also a few other points that the kind of skills gaps are causing a decrease in productivity, and also potentially a decrease in the ability to actually abide to quality standards. So if we're sending things up into space and they've not met that quality standard, it's not quite as easy as just taking a bike back to Halfords and getting it fixed or getting a spare part. So that's something that we might need to consider quite carefully. So if we have a look at this kind of graph, this shows the overall breakdown of some kind of broad areas of skills gaps in the space industry. So this is for the current workforce, and about 60% of businesses were saying, look, about 50% of businesses saying we've got skills gaps in the current workforce, and the majority of them are saying, look, that's in the software and data side of things, or commercial operations, the business aspect. So that means we've got people struggling with the tech aspect and actually the commercialization of the space industry. So we have a look in a little bit more detail. This is how the skills break down. And the biggest demand, the biggest gap that employers are saying they're seeing in their current workforce is actually the ability to use artificial intelligence and machine learning. So maybe take this with a slight pinch of salt, because this survey was conducted about the same time ChatGPT really got in the news. I think maybe everyone did think, right, we really do need to get on this. But it's still quite an important fact that the kind of top thing that everyone thought about was, in the future, we think we're going to need AI. What don't we have in our current workforce? AI abilities. So that's quite a serious one. The next one's kind of systems engineering, and it's great that OSS is tackling some of that here at the moment. But then a lot of the ones that you see on the list are to do with that data analysis, processing data, software engineering. But I'm not going to say I like it, but it's always good to see that transferable skills are also recognised in the industry as well. And actually, industry saying, look, there is a demand for more people with the ability to kind of lead or motivate a team, to communicate, to manage a project. It's not just we need technical skills only, it's the transferable skills which are also in really high demand. So in job applicants, it's a kind of similar sort of story. What we're seeing is quite a lot of demand for roles which use software and data skills and systems engineering skills. Almost half of all roles that respondents to the survey said they were recruiting for last year are in those two areas, software and data and systems engineering. So we're thinking that actually we've got skills gaps in software and data and skills gaps in system engineering. That's definitely driving demand to get more people into those areas. Now, this is also just a breakdown which might be helpful for anyone who is looking at roles, but this is a breakdown of by kind of role area where the recruitment's happening. So in the last 12 months, what we're seeing is that about a fifth of all roles that were hired for in the space sector are junior. So that's interns, graduates, apprentices, kind of trainee positions. About 60% are at that mid-level. So once you've got about 3 or 5 years experience upwards, most of the jobs are in that kind of bulk. And then there's only kind of 20% again for the really senior roles. So it's that kind of bulk in the mid-career. But as we'll see, there's kind of lots of variation between that as well. We also asked employers, well, how easy or how difficult is it to find different types of roles when you're going out and advertising jobs? And we made a bit of a matrix, says what's the demand versus what's the difficulty. So you can see here actually at the top, systems engineering, software and data, again, they're these high demand, high difficulty roles. But down the bottom, we've got roles which are lower demand, like spacecraft operations. Don't need a huge number of people working in spacecraft operations, but they're actually still quite difficult to recruit for. About 4 out of 5 when we ask people to rank them. So this isn't an easy, there's nothing in the space sector which is easy to recruit for really, but there's just different demand for different types of roles. But if we look at where job applicants are lacking skills compared to the workforce, I think the things that really stand out to me is the transferable skills. So this kind of purple bar is the transferable skills for job applicants here. Almost half of job applicants, or half of companies said job applicants are lacking transferable skills. So the ability to lead a project or lead a team, to motivate people, to communicate, to actually work in that team as well. It's not necessarily they don't have the technical skills, it's they don't have the transferable skills. So I think that's the one that I pick up in. If you're looking at applying for a job in the space industry, highlighting that you do have those transferable skills is probably a good way of standing out amongst the crowd. So again, this is just a bit more of a breakdown, and there's a whole load of data about this, but again, you can see that the kind of skills gaps on an individual basis are quite high in AI, machine learning, software engineering, those sorts of things, but also leadership, strategy, project management, technical leadership, that ability to actually be a significant part of a project. So in terms of future skills, again, you won't be surprised that software and data comes up quite a lot. As the space industry is moving more towards the use of technology in many different ways, the demand for software is really only going to grow, or companies expect it to grow. So what we're seeing here is essentially the downstream space sector is expanding. It's growing. It's a really big growth area of the UK space industry. And at the same time, lots of the kind of manufacturing procedures are becoming more technical. So drawing designs on CAD, on a computer, using machines with human-machine interfaces. There's a need for the use of technology. So people are expecting, yes, we're going to need this more and more and more. I always found it interesting that maybe transferable skills is a little bit lower here. We may not need as many, but I would say actually people are underestimating their need for transferable skills in the future too, especially if AI is coming online more and more. And again, there's that breakdown. AI is at the top. We need leadership. We need project management. We need technical leadership. Those are in quite high demand. So there's a whole load of information in the Space Sector Skills Survey if you do want to go read it. There are lots and lots of fun graphs to look at. But I thought I'd just end briefly on where, if you're looking to try and upskill, you can find some sort of training. And one way that I would recommend is the Space Training Catalogue. And this was a catalogue which really came about from, I guess, Space Skills Advisory Panel, from pulling together lots and lots of courses that were available online. We've taken this and put it online so you can access space-related training and degree programs and find out about how you can access them, how much they cost, how long they are, where you can go. So this is also getting a bit of an update of the next year, so we'll have lots more training in to come. So I will leave it there. Thank you very much. You're on mute, I think, Kathryn.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Heidi. That was really interesting, and hopefully a great introduction to the rest of the session. So hopefully give some people a taster on what the skills gaps are, and some really useful to provide that link to the resource of where you can find some training. So that was fantastic. Thank you. So right, so we were going to have a bit of hopefully some question and answer session a bit now, and we have had one question come in, but I believe the person who sent the question is actually on the call, so I think that was Chris King. If you'd like to actually ask your question, that would be fantastic.
Hi folks, hope you can hear me.
Yep.
I'll be honest, I submitted this question a while ago. I'm not sure I can remember exactly what it is.
I've got it on the next slide, so here we go. So hopefully, oh god, sorry, when my IT, there you go, that was your question, I believe. Hopefully that looks familiar.
Really? Yeah, okay, and I've put my camera on as well just so I can say hi to folks. Yeah, so Heidi's just talk just then actually really speaks, I think, quite closely to this, in that you know, a lot of those requirements and needs of the space industry are at that that mid-level career, and as well as some, you know, upper level career as well. Certainly in my experience, I see there's loads of support for people getting into the space industry from, you know, from entry level positions, you know, coming from university, like getting out degrees, graduate courses, apprenticeship schemes, that kind of thing. But there's a lot less support and routes in, I would say, for people who are at that mid-level of their career, especially if they haven't come from like directly like a space or an engineering background. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear views, answers on how people who've not pursued like that specific road, that specific route, are able to get into the space industry. And I think it's also an interesting challenge for people who haven't come from an academic background too, because there's lots of transferable skills that they've picked up along the way as well. Kathie.
Good question, Chris. And I think it's an area that we're going to see more and more organizations being very open to. And I'm thinking here, the question you asked, or the part of the question that was related to non-space people, if you like, coming into the sector. I work for Satellite Applications Catapult, and our organization has a real mix of people from all sorts of different sectors who've come in, who've gained and spun up, if you like, with Space 101, and we now have them working on space related projects. Now the chances are they've come from all sorts of different communities. It may be nuclear engineering, for example. It could be automotive, and they've come in. Certainly in terms of automotive, we see quite a big interchange of people coming and going between ourselves and particularly F1 in where I'm based in Harwell. You know, we're not a million miles from Bicester and Brackley, and there's great interchange of expertise in aerodynamics particularly. So there is that churn. Younger companies, smaller companies don't necessarily see how they can have the bandwidth to bring people in, but we are seeing there's a gathering number of opportunities, growing number of opportunities by a lot of learning providers now providing short 101 courses. I can think of several, many of the, well, I think they're all on Heidi's database, really. Great place to start. Some of those courses will take a day. They'll give you a very cursory, this is a basic introduction. Others will take you a month, 2 months, whatever. You can spin up quite quickly and come away with at least the basics, the building blocks of what you're going to need. And if you're an engineer wanting to go into an engineering position, to an extent, all that's different from what's going on here is physics. You can learn the physics. So there are a growing number of opportunities, I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree that, and a special point that there hasn't been a huge amount specifically targeted at mid-career for space yet. But this isn't applicable to everyone, of course, but I think what's good to see is there's starting to be some partnerships set up in the space industry. I guess what I'm thinking of in particular is UK Space has partnered with Redeployable, I think it's called. So looking at people who are coming out of the services, how they can get a bit of training and then go into the space industry. It's kind of helping that. And as Kathie said, there should be more coming along, especially the Space Agency's training fund that's just come out. I think something that we heard in an event on Monday that was quite interesting, though, was actually about apprenticeships being used as a retraining for people who have already had a bit of a career and want to change. So we had one story about people who have come out and done their degree, spent a couple of years and gone, you know what, this isn't quite right. I'm going to use an apprenticeship as a way to change my career in a slightly different kind of field and move in. And I think that was at a kind of level 4, level 5. But there's also a bunch of apprenticeships around kind of level 6, 7. I'm thinking kind of level 7 systems engineer, I think it is. So actually people can if they've got a bit of a background in engineering, do an apprentice. I know it doesn't apply to everyone, but do that apprenticeship program, possibly in a space company, or possibly use it to pivot into space. So I think there's kind of different uses for apprenticeship programs that people don't always think of. But yes, so I think it would be great if there were more opportunities for people to change midway.
I think picking up on the apprenticeship point is an important one. That generally the ones who are the companies that are most likely to be advertising and recruiting apprentices just now are the bigger companies, though there are some smaller ones. Don't miss out on them. But particularly thinking of the systems engineering one that Heidi's been talking about, that's a fantastic opportunity for somebody who's already graduated, they've done their first degree, they've been in work for a while, and it might be that they're already in the workplace, in a space workplace, but they want to upskill, or indeed the company wants to upskill them with systems engineering experience, and they can study for that extra step up through the workplace, and it's all paid for, which is not a bad thing to have.
So noticing Chris's comment there about BAE Systems, yes, they've launched the first level 6 degree apprenticeship in space systems engineering. So that was level 6. And so the level 6 space systems engineering as a standard has only just been approved. And BAE Systems partnered with the University of Portsmouth are the first, I believe, in the country to be offering that as an opportunity. So that and that's, I believe, open right now for applications. So
Airbus is the same. Airbus is the same, Kathryn.
they're doing it as well.
Offering through Portsmouth.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. So there's 2 opportunities to do that course through the University of Portsmouth. So yes, and the level 4s are available also in Cornwall, Truro, and I'm not sure about where else is offering the level 4 space technician apprenticeship. So
have to check, but I know Havant Southdown was. So I can't remember if they still are.
Yeah. Yeah. So great. So does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it is good to see, and I've been keeping my eye on this for a while, as some of you may be aware. It is good to see that things are starting to spin up outside of like purely people who are leaving university with a degree in engineering or astrophysics or something similar. So yeah, hopefully the trend continues.
And I can speak from our own company experience. As a member of the team on the call, whether he wants to speak, I don't know, but he's come from non-space industry and is an electronics engineer. I don't know if you want to say anything or not, Kevin. Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, it's fine. No, I was actually about to butt in, but I'll turn the camera on to see me. But yes, I've come into the space industry after a lot of years outside. I started my career in military for equipment for the British Army. So I had a bit of a career for about 10 years doing that sort of thing. And then I was in industry making rugged cameras for the nuclear power industry, amongst other things. So I've then switched across to space quite late in my career. And yeah, I mean, whether it was a little bit easier for me than others, I don't know, because I think when you start your career, and I started quite a long time ago, space wasn't, so prominent in this area, because there was a lot of companies like British Aerospace, quite a lot of aerospace industry, etc. And obviously a lot of that's died down, as has the military. So I've always had that interest in space. So, of course, yes, I was aware of a growing presence of satellite companies within the area. So obviously it became kind of natural to sort of seek a job in that direction. And yes, I mean, in addition to this job, I've had contact. Well, I actually worked for another satellite company, fairly local, although not in a satellite role, called OSSAT. But also I've had contact with another satellite company who were interested at around the same time as I took on this role. So yes, I think it's fair to say that there are opportunities out there if people choose to look. And certainly from the point of view of technical skills, there's obviously a reasonable amount to learn moving across from other industries, but I guess that's always going to be the case. But I think as long as the engineer's got an open mind and is prepared to sort of take on new skills and new ways of working, etc., then there's no real reason why you can't make the change. And certainly, I must admit, I've definitely really enjoyed moving over to space, and definitely enjoy the work. It's let's just say the week does fly past, which is always a good sign.
Thanks, Kevin.
Sorry, Kathryn, I was just going to add one of the things, a bit like Kevin, I've worked in a few different industries and a number of different systems, and I think it goes back to that the point that Heidi raised during her presentation is that those transferable skills and actually being able to take what you can do elsewhere. So I've worked across aerospace and space domains, and a lot of the core of what you do is the same regardless of what system you're working on or what it is you're actually doing. It's having those underlying skills to bring across. And I think when I talk to people about kind of changing jobs or looking at doing other things or what things they should be doing, I'd always sort of push that transferable skill piece, and kind of that can you do sort of the team working and have that kind of brain that like allows you to do some of that critical thinking or work in a particular way, because that's much more important than actually understanding or knowing everything there is to know about space. I think is really key, because you can learn space, but what you gain through experience is actually sometimes more important. Because I would always rather have someone who perhaps didn't know as much about space but had some more of those transferable skills, because you can teach someone the technical bit, but what you can't teach someone is some of those transferable skills that only come through experience. And so for me, it's always been less about can you do all the maths, and it's can you work in a particular way to actually achieve what we're looking to do. And so that's always been kind of more important for me. And actually I found when I've changed roles is actually having the confidence in myself to go, I can learn this new system, but I know I've got a good kind of foundation to build from. And I think that's the thing I've always tried to spin when I've had interviews or I've looked to go kind of elsewhere, is say, actually I may not know your actual widgets, but I know enough to know I can learn your widgets and be a productive member of your team. And I just touching on the apprenticeship thing. So I did a level 7 apprenticeship part-time with my previous company, so system engineering one. We were kind of the first cohort to go through it, to sort of go through and learn, and that was a really interesting experience, and actually was made up of a lot of people who were sort of similar in career to me. So had been out, there was a few who were kind of just post-university, but there was a lot of us who had sort of 10-15 years experience, and also a few people who were, how do I say, more towards the end of their career as well. And it was actually, but we hadn't all perhaps come from the same background. So it was a really great leveler in terms of finding out which bits. So I'm a system engineer, so which bits of system engineering I knew and which bits I needed to go away and do some more work on. And these were great. And it was really, because I was worried when I signed up to do it, because had the word apprenticeship tagged to it, and I thought, well, hang on, I'm the wrong side of 30. Am I really going to become an apprentice? And actually, it was really refreshing to do something where there wasn't that. I think the perceptions changed a lot over time of actually what an apprenticeship is and what you can get out of it. And it was great to mix with people from all different industries, all had different perspectives, and actually that mixing almost, we learned. Some of those contacts and those people I still see now, and because one of the things is, space is a very small industry. So once you start to get to know people, you kind of see the same people crop up time and time again. But I mean, I must say the apprenticeship I did, although I was working, so I worked full time, studied part time like everyone else on my course. But it was a really good experience, and I say a real diverse mix. I wouldn't let the term apprenticeship put off people from thinking, oh, that's for someone who's just left school. It can be much broader than that, and it was really useful. Anyway, sorry,
Thanks, Vicky, that was great. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question now. So Rubik, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, you had a question related to cybersecurity, if you wanted to. You're welcome to ask, or I could read it out. Okay, the question was, I come from a purely offensive security background, and I'm curious what trends you are all seeing in cybersecurity for space and space systems, and is there roles with a security focus, but in space? I think the quick answer would be yes, and that's only going to grow with time, would be my quick answer. So, any thoughts on that for anyone?
Gosh, I mean, yeah, security is coming up even more and more and more, and I'm almost surprised we didn't see it get highlighted more in the skills survey, if I'm honest. But you think about every kind of trend, everything we're putting out into space has sort of software. It's got communications, got more software-defined satellites than we kind of used to. Everything's essentially possibly hackable in some way. We've also got to think about the kind of security aspect of using really high resolution data. I know it's not quite the same as cybersecurity, but also what's the kind of security implications of being able to monitor everyone in a very high definition way. And so actually that emphasis on security and cybersecurity is only going to grow, especially if we're launching more and more and more satellites, which are going to be produced not in a kind of kind of bespoke nature, but on a kind of conveyor belt of satellites potentially. So I think there's loads, but Kathie or Kathryn, I'll let you add.
Well, I don't know if you want to speak, Kathie. I was recently at a conference, and they had a security cyber expert there from government, and I get the feeling that the requirements in terms of licensing and things like that will grow in future, requiring us to address cybersecurity more, and certainly was getting the feeling that trend will be definitely coming. So I can only see this area as growing as we move forward in the future. I don't know if you want to add anything, Kathie, to that.
Kathryn, I completely agree with you. We are seeing an increasing emphasis on ensuring that all components are secure by design, and particularly as we move towards a world where we are trying to be more sustainable, where we are doing in-orbit servicing and manufacturing. You only want the people you trust to consider messing about with your satellite. And I think that is, as Kathryn said, that's going to become more and more important. And that applies to absolutely everything from ground control systems, mission control systems and operations, all the way through to technology that you've launched, effectively said goodbye to, and you want to make sure that the data coming back, of course, is robust and trustworthy and everything else. I always remember some time ago working with a lot of scientists on using Earth observation derived data, and most of them not really, so our data's fine, we can trust it. And then ClimateGate happened, and actually everything we do, we need to be sure we can trust the science that we're getting as much as we need to be able to trust the telecoms and the position, navigation and timing information that we rely on every single day. It's really important. So Rubik's, I think it's a brilliant question, and yes, absolutely imperative.
Yes, so a growing area, and certainly you will see space companies recruiting more and more in those skills areas, I think, in the future, definitely. So Nigel, sorry, is that someone speaking? Sorry.
I just said thank you.
Oh no, you're well.
I finally got my mic working.
Yeah.
No, it's just interesting. So I'm located in the United States, and I like I said, I have an offensive security background, and I've been looking at space from that perspective. And it's interesting to hear what you all are saying, because it definitely aligns from what I'm seeing in the trends and the accessibility to things. Like, you mentioned like software-defined satellites and software-defined radio and stuff like that just changed the game, not only from a capability in space, but from a hey, it's making the technology much more accessible and stuff like that. So a lot of my research and focus has been purely from the cybersecurity side of stuff. But I was curious because I'm not seeing necessarily the uptick in those roles and the job postings and stuff. It's still very much the engineers and the project managers and the program managers and things like that. And I'm just curious as to like where that ramp is going to start to uptick. And I know it's different in different countries and things like that, but as far as the industry as a whole, I'm still waiting to see that uptick in and more cybersecurity centric roles, bringing in people, from with offensive capabilities and stuff. Because, it's everyone that I've worked with on the space side, like just absolutely brilliant people. And on the cybersecurity stuff, same thing. Getting us to work together for that common goal is kind of the challenge, and I'm some organizations are doing it, some are hoping not to have to do it for a while because it does increase time, complexity, burden, and stuff like that. The difficult thing that I'm seeing as someone outside of space. I don't work in space. I work in offensive security. I hack things, I break things for a living, and to tell people how to go fix it, hopefully. And so I'm trying to apply my skills as a third party, looking at these space, the ecosystem of space and space systems and the vulnerabilities that are there, and going, what do we do to kind of drive this forward? But at the same time, like, space is already hard enough. Now let's go bolt on cybersecurity. Like I was like, I know we need this. Like, it's super, 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 super important, but unfortunately it's going to make everything you're doing even harder. Sorry, guys. Just go with it. It'll be fun. And like trying to find that balance of things. So thank you for the information. I was just was genuinely curious what your perspective was, because like I said, most of my stuff I'm primarily focusing here in the United States and seeing the perspective from overseas. It's the same, and which is awesome. And so thank you.
I think ultimately the uptick will come, it will be driven either by regulation when companies are required to do something about it, or something happens in terms of a satellite gets hacked. If either, which of those events probably occur, whichever of those occurs first will probably drive the uptick. But I think from a UK regulation perspective, I think it's going to come, So hopefully before we get hacked.
Ideally, I would say that would be the case.
Yeah.
Even in the looking at enterprise environments and corporate environments, which I spend most of my time testing, it's the policy, it's the regulation, it's the GRC elements that really drive and able to enact the change and stuff. And that's fundamentally what's going to take. Hopefully, we don't experience another K8 sat like stuff and things like that. But awesome, thank you so much.
No problem. Brilliant. Okay. Nigel, so you've raised an interesting point. Did you want to bring that up? So
yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep, good. I've worked as a permanent and as a contractor at several, let's just say, prominent space companies in the UK, and one in particular, there was a complete lack of pay rises that even kept up with the cost of rent. At the other, they were hiring graduates at a rate of 2 per year, and of a 5-year rollover, they'd be lucky to have 2 remaining. So people are interested in space, but if they see their bank account going down, they will go elsewhere. So when you have that presentation, very good presentation, by the way, showing that there's a great big skills gap in the mid range of people's careers, it's because people are interested and have left so that they can put a roof over their heads. Having seen that, it's actually quite disheartening sometimes, because some of these guys are very, very smart. They could do a lot, but they've made a financial choice that means that the space industry is losing out.
Yes, I guess what you're saying is there's a demand for software skills across a wide range of industries. And even if we are really interesting, if we're not paying competitive rates, we're going to lose out to those other industries. And hence, maybe that's why we've got a particular skills gap, or a factor in why we've got that skills gap. So really interesting point. I'm not sure how we can address that point. I'm assuming market forces eventually in these companies will drive that a little bit, and they will have to start paying more for software. In my experience in space companies, the software engineers do tend to be amongst the higher pay group because of this very factor. But I don't know what else to say to that point, really.
The first company I mentioned, when I left them, I literally got a 40% pay rise by going somewhere else. So it's at that level, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yes, it's I mean, I won't hark on about the data too much. I think it's things we already know, but one of the big drivers for recruitment challenges is that salary. People move to get a better salary, but we're also seeing that people, on the whole, not for everyone, but want to stay in the space industry, so they move around the space industry to get a higher salary within space. So I think at least we know they quite like space enough to stay. I guess there's also a few other factors that we can pick up with companies that provide training tend to have a better retention rate. Companies where there seems to be a better kind of workplace dynamic, again, better retention. So definitely salary is a challenge, and we can't mandate as a sector everyone must raise a salary. But I think if companies are struggling to retain, at least they can look at what other things they can do to support people, whether it's more flexible working, or whether it's providing better training or better working conditions, or kind of working around family commitments as well. So, but yes, it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
And I think ultimately the other problem is it's hard to make money in space industry. So it's.
I think that it's an interesting conundrum, and I'm not sure that there's going to be an answer. But when there's a very prominent AI prof in the UK who complains that she can't find good postdocs. You know, she can't keep on her PhD students because they are recruited straight out of her hands as undergraduates. Straight into the city or whatever, and that's pretty soul destroying for her. It's equally soul destroying for us, and it is hard. I don't think there is a straightforward answer, and I can remember having a conversation with a prof, in fact, in mechanical engineering at a prominent London science university. No guesses for that one, and asking him where all his graduates went, because we didn't see a lot of them coming across the spin in the early days of spin. And he said, well, you know, if you wanted to work in London or be based in and around London, you're certainly not going to go and get a job in space or anything that's focused on engineering. You're going to go into finance, and finance loves an engineer. So it's not an easy solution.
Oh, brilliant. I think that was a really interesting discussion. I just wondered maybe this is a really good time for if you want to talk about those space placements in industry, Kathie. So
well, we've talked a little bit about issues that companies have recruiting at the bottom, and generally companies will tell you that they don't have too big a problem recruiting straight from university in whatever subject it is. However, the eternal whinge, if you like, let's use that term, from employers is, well, they haven't got any work experience. And way back in 2012, when I first started getting involved in space-related skills, this was identified, and we went out to industry and said, well, you know, what's the issue? Well, you know, nobody comes with it. Well, do you offer placements? At which point the big companies said, well, yeah, we offer a few, and the small companies said we can't do it. So Space Placements in Industry was born. We were lucky enough to find some funding. We now have even more funding for it. And Space Placements in Industry is alive, kicking and exploding at the moment. So if you're a student, that's a crucial thing. You must be a registered student at the moment, i.e. between now and, even if you graduate this year, you will still be a student until the end of August. You are eligible to apply for a SPIN placement. The placements are advertised right now. I think the first few have closed, but there are going to be in excess of 130, 140 by the end of the recruitment period. And they cover pretty much every kind of job other than CEO across the space sector. Lots of opportunities that range from creative ones, helping in marketing, through to mechanical engineering, and lots, let me say, software engineering and robotics this year. It's great because the scheme brokers that connection between you as a student and an employer. But what it also does is help you as a student understand, if you're going back to university, how you might be able to make sure that you still gather those extra skills that you've heard us all talk about today. You can see what those skills are. If you are going back to university after a placement, make sure you pick up those extra skills and think laterally about what you're learning. And undoubtedly, the employers use it as an informal interview system for a longer term job, whether that's at the end of the placement because you have graduated this summer, or whether it's keeping in touch with you until you do graduate in another year's time. It's a fantastic opportunity to learn something. And actually, even if you find yourself in a placement where either the dynamic generally doesn't float your boat, or the subject matter doesn't float your boat, you know what? That's equally valid. You've been paid for the summer. Great, take that away. But you know what you don't want to do next time around. Always a useful thing to know as well. So please reach out if you need to, but also look at the Space Placements in Industry website on the the pages on the Catapult's website, and you will see, I think there are something like 40 advertised already, and more coming out all the time.
Yeah, I had a look just earlier. There are lots up there. There are 12 closing tomorrow, so it might be worth a quick look. Any students out there, have a quick look tonight. I think they close on Fridays as a general rule, so make sure that you have a quick look. But yeah, 12 close tomorrow, but there are lots of new ones gone on. I have to do my own little plug. R2 SPIN placements are up there. They went up there today, so and is now live. So please have a look, and if you're interested, apply to us. And yes, and I can reiterate what Kathie said in terms of, I was a bit sneaky. I had a look through for my kids, and my kids aren't doing engineering or science. So, and there are placements that are appropriate for them. One's doing psychology and the other one's doing geography. And they both got bombarded with emails going, maybe you want to think about these. So, so I can attest to the fact it's a wide range of courses, reflecting the fact that actually, a space industry requires skills across a wide range of fields and not just the STEM subjects. And so, and I like the fact that the SPIN scheme also reflects that wide variety of roles that there are out there in the marketplace. So I think that's fantastic. And as industry, the way we've had space placements, I can attest to the fact that we have hired people off the back of doing a SPIN placement with us. So they are immensely valuable in that regard as well. So, Kathryn, I'm looking at one now.
and I guess what I should also say is that those who are successful at achieving a placement this summer will be invited to attend the SPIN Induction Day, which gives you an opportunity to learn about the depth and breadth of the sector and all the lots of things you might not even know about it. And at the end, we bring everybody together again and ask you to produce an academic poster that describes what you've been doing, and to give a quick 2-minute pitch on what you've been doing. And effectively, that gives you an opportunity to demonstrate to your own employer, your own SPIN supervisor, and other potential employers that you can communicate in a professional fashion. And that was, there have been plenty of times over the years when I've wondered why the heck I'm organising that final event. But that final event really pays off from an employer's and students' perspective. So I think it's, yeah, we'll keep doing it until I really do decide that it's too much like hard work.
Well, I think it's really valuable that the students all get to talk about their experiences and share their experiences on it, and those soft skills, transferable skills that they've learned. And it's an opportunity for them to do that networking as well. So at the UK Space Conference in Belfast that was held in November, there was the poster session then, where the students and those poster sessions were held, and people could go around and talk them through, and developing those skills and be able to talk about your project to interested parties is a very valuable skill to learn and develop. So, and any opportunity to get those skills is fantastic. So thank you to you guys. Thank you to your hard work for organising those things. So, okay, right. I think we're rapidly approaching towards the end of the hour. Did anyone have any further comments or questions or anything they wanted to bring up? So as always, we will edit this together and put it up on our YouTube later, so you can come back and have a look at some point. And we'll make sure that we'll put it with a link to the Space Placements Programme and maybe that training, the Heidi stuff as well. So we'll put those links in as well with that post. So it's been a great pleasure to talk to you all today, and thank you ever so much, Heidi and Kathie, for supporting, especially as you're on your holiday, Kathie. Really immensely grateful for you taking the time out of that to talk to us today. I hope everyone found that useful session. Our next session next month, we're going to do slightly differently. We've not got a meeting slot. We're going to release a video cast, and we're going to be doing that on the topic of sustainability and how you do sustainable space. So so that's what we plan to do sometime in March. So watch our socials, and that will appear on our YouTube channel when we've done it. So thank you again. Hope you all have a great evening, and hopefully see you again sometime. Okay. Thank you.